So I'm here to give a good morning and welcome to BSides Las Vegas Proving Ground to you guys. This talk is Human Honeypots, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Implant by Nick Koch. A few announcements before we begin. We'd like to thank our sponsors, especially our Inner Circle sponsors, Critical Stack and Volleymail, and our stellar sponsors, Amazon, BlackBerry, and Microsoft. It's their support along with our other sponsors, donors, and volunteers that make this event possible. As I mentioned, the camera is live, the mics are hot, so please go ahead and take this time to silence your cell phones so that we are not going to interrupt the speakers or our audience on YouTube. And if you have any questions at the end of the talk, please flag me down. I will wander over with the microphone so that YouTube has the pleasure of hearing your question as well. Without much ado.
Good morning. I'm Nick, and as she just said, this is Human Honeypots, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Implant. Now, a little bit about myself. I'm a cybersecurity student at Pensacola State College. I'm a member of the Cyber Defense Club, and I'm the resident biohacker. If you want to OSINT me further, my blog is down there, as well as my Twitter handle. Now, I have a lot to cover and not a lot of time before I get shepherd hooked off the stage, so here's a brief agenda. First, why am I here? Followed by a brief treatise on near-field communications, and then implants. And then finally, I am Become Cyborg, the destroyer of phones. Now, the times are changing. Younger generations are growing up with better security awareness. They're less susceptible to just clicking on suspicious links on Facebook or in their email. And because of this, we have to adapt and overcome. Now, the technology available to us is also changing. Through the advent of NFC and RFID implants, we have more ways of getting these messages across, stuffing more tricks up our sleeves, or in this case, skin. Now, our mobile devices are carrying increasingly more and more sensitive information. Our text messages have our two-factor authentication keys. Our photos have work schedules, our passwords, and pictures of various natures. Personal notes contain our journals and our medication reminders, and Facebook and Instagram both have our location data. And of course, names, numbers, addresses, and those associations, while they don't seem like much at first, add up very quickly. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes, we have to do a little bit of housekeeping, hence a brief treatise on near-field communications. Now, how does it work? Well, you see, when an active device and a passive device love each other very much, they do something, thank you, they do something incredibly special. And this is called electrodynamic coupling. Now, active devices can both read and write data. And for example, we have our smartphone right here, we have a Proxmark, and we have a smart lock. Whereas our passive devices are read-only. And our examples being key fobs, smart cards, and of course, implants. Now, they have multiple uses. Sharing social media links, storing your medical info, sending someone to fakebook.com. And our active devices have different modes. You have peer-to-peer mode, which is two active devices just talking to each other and exchanging data. Card emulation mode, which is you clone a passive device and then you replay it back, and reading and writing. Reading and writing is what we're going to be spending most of our time on. And it is simply read from a device and put it on your passive device. Now, we have in-depth. Now, this is how we communicate to our passive devices. It's the language of NFC. It's the NFC data exchange format. Now, in-depth records are separated into a header and a payload. And it's up to the transmitting and receiving applications to agree on the formatting and definition of that payload. And all that means is if you try to open up an app that doesn't exist on someone's smartphone, the smartphone is going to scream at you and go, hey, what the hell is this? Now, headers are going to contain the record ID, how long the record is, and the type. So is it a picture, video, or maybe the login information for your Wi-Fi pineapple, whatever. And the payload is actually what it is. Now, the length of them, well, theoretically, that can be about as long as you want. Practically speaking, it's a different story. Now, your typical implant only has 886 bytes of storage. However, as of the writing of this, Dangerous Things released one that does 8 kilobytes. However, it's not the size that matters, it's how you use it. In this case, you see, if you're sitting at a bar and you're trying to get someone's phone to scan your chip, the longer that payload is, the longer it's going to take for it to completely transfer over to your active device. So if some jabroni bumps into you, you're going to have to start all over, and it's going to start getting suspicious really fast. Now, time for the implants. Now, why in the hell would you have a chip, a little piece of borosilicate glass with some copper wire inside of it, shoved inside your hand? Well, for one, it's still new enough that people aren't going to believe you until you show them. So, of course, that's your way in. Hey, I don't believe you. Cool, hand me your phone. And of course, it's just way cooler than an NFC ring or a business card. And that seems a little superficial, but again, new technology, we love shiny things. And we've seen NFC rings before. We've seen NFC business cards before. Not many people have seen a chip implanted under one's skin. Now, the procedure goes like this. You have two types of implants, a cylindrical tag and a flat flex tag. Now, the cylindrical tag is a quick injection, and there's a variety of safe implantation areas that we'll get into in a moment. And they're not that painful. Now, don't get me wrong, they're painful, but not as painful as you might think. Whereas the flex tag, it's going to require an incision and some stitches, and the implantation areas are still being tested. However, there is a general rule of thumb for where you can put them, and they are incredibly painful. They're actually going to be cutting into you and, again, stitching you up, and you're not going to get any painkillers. That being said, caution, the following slides contain some minor medical gore. If you're squeamish, turn away now. Anyone? Anyone? Cool. So, implantation, implantation areas. We have the webbing, which is where this poor guy is being poked, between the index finger and the thumb. And it has the perk of being easy to access from the active device, so you can just tap your phone on it, with the low risk of damaging nerves or blood vessels, mainly just fat and skin in that area. Next up, you have the metacarpals. Now, the metacarpals are at the top of your hand right here. And of course, it's easy to access. Just tap your phone on top of it. However, depending on your personal anatomy, you might not want to choose this location. And that's because you have a lot of bones, you have veins running across the top, and our hands are fragile, precious things. Next up, we have the blade. Now, the blade, it's not necessarily the most practical for this application. It's great for if you're doing access control and you just want to bump a door and open it. However, again, depending on your own anatomy, there's some risk involved here because you have a lot of muscle. So if you don't have a lot of fat in that area, or just a lot of skin, it's very easy to go too deep and to go into that muscle, messing your hand up. Now, for the flex tags, there's no real preferred location. Again, they're all being tested out. However, so long as it doesn't constantly flex, which I know is a bit counterintuitive, it's fine. That means that, yes, while you can give what you're attacking the middle finger, it's not exactly the best idea. Some people like to pop the knuckles like this, and this is essentially a ribbon cable. There's a chance it might break inside of you. For anyone that had to close their eyes, I don't think there was anyone, it's now safe to open them. We may now go back to our regularly scheduled presentation. Now, post-implantation, I'm going to repeat this a couple times, put a password on your implant. The last thing you want is for it to be locked into read-only mode and you not know it, and then you're walking around with goat's in your hand. Now, if this happens, it's not the end of the world, but you are going to be sitting there for 2 to 3 hours with a proxmark on your hand trying to crack that key. And it's also not going to be very well at first. This is normal. Don't panic. Your hand is swelling and it's increasing the size, or it's increasing the area between your active device and your implant. You need to be touching. And the closer you are, the better. And of course, you have implant migration. These aren't coated in biobond. They're going to move around for the first couple weeks until the collagen starts forming around them. Please, 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 please follow your aftercare instructions, especially if you get one during Hacker Summer Camp. Infections are no joke. Compleg is a real thing. This will also help reduce scarring and keep your healing time short so you can get around to playing with your implant. And in the worst case scenario, should you want to upgrade, it's a standard outpatient procedure. Make a little slit, pop it out like a zit, you're good to go. And they're more durable than you might think. And athletes have these, lacrosse players peeing right on the implant. I do HEMA, longsword, pow, right on the implant. If your implant gets crushed, your hand is also likely crushed. You have bigger things to worry about. Now, as much as they may look like magic, they aren't. They have a few limitations. Cylindrical tags, for example, are kind of picky about positioning, and this is because most active devices are designed for flat surfaces, and, well, these are not. And because of the way they're shaped, they're also going to have a very small surface area. Now, flat tags, they read better, but they're not as flexible as the name implies, and they're easier to notice due to scarring. And then smartphones themselves. Now, smartphones actually are doing a pretty good job at protecting against these kind of attacks. For example, your phone will not scan unless it is unlocked. That's great. That used to not be the case. The antenna is not always in the same place as well. So if we're talking Android here, variety of different Android phones, some antennas may be on the side, some may be on the top. Some might not even have NFC at all, so you might want to research your target beforehand. And you have to be touching the device. This means that some phone cases, OtterBoxes, maybe one of those cases that are covered in crystals on the back, whatever your taste may be, might interfere with the implant. And of course, your user has to have NFC enabled to begin with, but with Google Pay and stuff like that, that's already highly likely. Now, we have our implant. You're now a cyborg. What can you do now? DLC. Yes, thank you, EA. Yes, your implants have downloadable content in the form of apps that you put on your phone to interface with them. Of course, we have dangerous NFC, which will protect your implant and is literally the first thing you should do. And then we have NFC tools. Now, NFC tools is free. However, if you're putting a chip inside your body, spring for the Pro version and support the developer as well. And this allows you to easily read from and write to your implant. Now for our attack vectors. We'll start off with malicious links. So your target's going to scan the chip and it's going to send them to a fraudulent website for credential harvesting. Maybe you're going to emulate Facebook and ask for GPS permissions. And this is going to last so long as the browser is open. It's fileless malware. Now, this is going to require a little bit of social engineering, because what's going to happen is it's going to pop up a prompt saying, hey, do you really want to go to this website? So what you do is you hide it, either with a link shortener, like a bit.ly link, or just overload them with the information and make a hilariously long URL. Next up, we have Bluetooth. So this is great for if you want to actually go through the phone. They scan the chip, and it's going to connect them to the Bluetooth device of your choosing. Even if Bluetooth is off, it's still going to start connecting to your device. And this is good if you want to do blue snarfing or blue bugging, with the caveat of course, you have to stay within Bluetooth range. Wi-Fi works the same way. They scan the chip, and it directs them to a specific access point. So Wi-Fi Pineapple or whatever your choice of rogue access point may be. And this is good for man-in-the-middle, traffic analysis, and what have you. And my personal favorite, V-code spoofing. If you did your research ahead of time, this is great, because what's going to happen is your victim's going to scan the code, and it's going to put what is essentially a virtual business code inside the phone. And instead of your name, you're going to put the name of where they work, or their child's school, or whatever bank they use. And so later on, you can call them up and be like, hello, this is Bank of America. I've noticed a compromise on your card. Can I get your card number and your social security number? And this is going to require a bit of sleight of hand because what's going to happen is that pesky prompt's going to pop up. So you want to have the device in hand, scan it, tap it, and you're good to go. And now for some final words. These implants exist, and they're growing in popularity. Roughly 50 to 100,000 people as of 2018 have these. People are also using NFC more and more on their phones for Google Pay and other applications. Now, people use implants for train and bus passes in Sweden. People use them for smart locks, even though I don't exactly recommend that. And we have to start educating people about NFC and about how it can be used against them, how it's no different than just clicking on a random link you see online. And before I go into the Q&A, I want to ask you, what else can you think of that we can do to push this technology further and to educate our users on the dangers of NFC and just scanning everything you see? Thank you.
Anybody have?
So I'm not all too familiar with like the NFC write capabilities, but is there a specific time or a specific amount of times that you would have to write to the tag? Or excuse me, I should probably rephrase that. Is there a limit to how many times you can write the tag before it starts to decay, I guess, in its storage space?
So the question is there a limit to how many times you can write to the tag? Yes and no. About 1 million times the amount of times you can read from it, but that resets whenever you write to it again. The tag is likely going to outlive you. Any other questions?
So is there any heat from repeatedly writing this quickly or other things like that? Could you perform an attack based on writing it over and over again? The USB drive heats up quite a lot. I'm wondering if these do. And can you push them too?
Okay, so you're asking is if there's like a duty cycle you need to worry about, or if it's generating heat. Not really. You're not going to feel it. There's not enough power being pushed through to really have to worry about that.
So in line with that, are there concerns from other types of implants in the same hand? Let's say you get a small magnet put in your index finger and you want to have a NFC chip implanted in the webbing between your thumb and your index finger. Are there any potential interference issues?
Yes, so the question is, with compatibility with other implants, say a magnet in your ring finger and an implant in your webbing, would there be any interference issues? It's not recommended, and that's because there's a slight risk of you accidentally degaussing your own implant.
Do you actually feel anything when you're getting the NFC read, like when the radiation is hitting it and it's activating? Is there any sort of sense that that's happening?
The question is there any really feeling of when you scan your actual device? No, not really. Your phone's going to vibrate, that's about it.
Why would you do this without any kind of anesthetic when you can order an anesthetic online and use it before you get... Seriously, I mean, from a microneedling place or, you know.
So the question is, why would you do this without anesthetic? For a flex tag, now you can go through dangerous things, you can buy anesthetic. However, a lot of legitimate piercers, they're not really supposed to give you anesthetic. That's kind of an FDA thing. For the injectables, you don't need it. It just doesn't hurt. well, it hurts, but it's not that bad. The worst part's actually not the injection, but they pinch your hand afterwards and hold it there for 30 seconds, put the Band-Aid on, and then you're walking on the convention center like this for about 30 minutes or so until it fully clots. That's the worst of it.
Hi. Are there any special concerns before going into an MRI?
None. These are too small to really be of an issue. Of course, you should always tell your physician, hey, I have a bit of metal inside me, so they can prep accordingly. But people have had MRIs, and it hasn't affected it at all. These also won't show up on, say, body scanners at the airport, for example.
Basically, my question's also dental work. Do you have to mention to your dentist, do you have metal in your body for dental surgery?
You shouldn't have to. Again, it's always a good idea, but that's just so the doctor knows what you have inside you, just in case something goes wrong and there's an emergency.
Hi, so I sort of have a double-part question. First of all, so you mentioned this is sort of similar to the tattoo industry, but also that people are just getting these at conventions. Is there any sort of regulation around this, or do you just have to be really, really careful? Also, if you walk up to your doctor, or if you go to your like general practitioner and say, "Hey, so I got this implant in a conference room at DEF CON," like, how are they going to react?
Okay, so as for regulations, there's not really any. This is a brand new field. Now, if you're going to go to your piercer, I recommend someone who's APP certified. But other than that, most piercers you go to, you're going to have to hand them some documentation, and they're going to have to look into it and research it before they do it. And you want to find a piercer that you trust 100%, as with all body modifications. Now, as for the reactions from your doctor, the exact quote from mine was, "Why the hell would you do that?" She was so confused. And she wasn't too enthused when I told her, well, because I can.
All right, folks, last question.
As you said earlier, I can guarantee my friends and family know nothing about this or nothing about the dangers. Do you know of any resources that I could use to school my friends and family on this particularly?
So the question is, are there any resources online? Dangerous Things has a Implant 101 page, and you can take them there. My blog also has a 6 months of the NFC implant page on it, and that can answer a lot of questions with how it's used and the procedure.
All right, everyone, let's give Nick one final round of applause. Thank you.